Hello everyone! Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle Tech Talk series. Today we'll be going through some various examples and provide some step-by-step demonstrations and of course answer questions around advanced networking with NG Firewall. This includes port forwarding, NAT one-to-one rules, VOIP configurations, VLANs, VRRP configuration, and many more. My name is Shannon Miles and I'm part of the product marketing team here and I'll be your host today. And John Coffin, our director of QA, he's on this as well, and he will be going through and demonstrating all these great features that you can do with NG Firewall. So just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. Please make sure you are using the select audio preference on the right-hand side. If you do select to use a phone, you will need to dial in and use the access code that's provided. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, and we will be sending a link with the recording 24 hours, so sometime tomorrow after this event has ended. So you'll be able to share the recording or rewatch and revisit areas that you want to follow up on. And as always, we'll be answering questions throughout this presentation. We have a few people on the line with us to help answer questions, so please just submit those questions through the Q&A box on the right-hand side. And as always, if we don't get to your question, just as time permits, you can always send us questions through sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. Now, before I pass this over to John, I just want to reiterate that this is a very highly technical webinar. So if you're not familiar with Untangle and our solution or any networking concepts, then this may not be the best webinar for you, and I suggest you take a look at our 101 webinar series that cover more higher level topics. And you can get a list of all those upcoming webinars and past webinars that we have done on our website. And with that, I'll pass it over to John.
Thanks, Shannon. And thanks everyone for joining us for this pretty advanced topic on different network techniques that you can expand and handle a lot more traffic on your network. Some of the things we're going to cover is port forwarding for servers behind Untangle. For example, if you have a mail server, you have a web server, or any other kind of services behind your Untangle, you can use Untangle to protect that service and limit the traffic going to it. NAT rules for multiple IPs, mainly if you have servers behind that or specific services that you want going out on a specific IP, you'll be using NAT rules. VoIP configurations, how to maximize your VoIP traffic and provide clear calls with your VoIP. High availability, known as VRRP, we'll show you how to get that set up and have basically hot swappable untangles available in case you have any hardware issues. And lastly, we're going to go over VLANs pretty quickly. VLANs is kind of a complicated subject. We definitely will cover the basics of it. But if you have any specific questions, it's probably best to post those on the forum of VLANs. Port forwarding. So with port forwarding, you can actually have one public IP address and have several different servers behind that be able to be accessed from the internet, just based on what particular port number you're using. For example, if you have a web server, you'll forward maybe port 80 only to that web server. But let's say you have a separate FTP server and you would set up a rule to port forward port 21 from the same IP address but to a different server behind your Untangle. And then also same thing with mail servers. Port 25, typical for incoming mail servers, you're going to use that, and I'll demonstrate how to do that real quickly. So here we are on a typical Untangle. We're configured, all set to go. And then we have our IPs on the outside. We'll take a look. So we have a static IP address set up on it, and we want to pull forward port 80 to our web server that's behind that. So we go over to our port forward rules. And there's two ways to do it. I highly recommend using the simple rules unless you have really something very specific that you want to do. And I'll go over both scenarios for you. So I want to set up my web services. to go to port 80, and this is going to a machine that I have on my internal network. And this is really all I have to do. And I can go ahead and say done and apply. And now I have anyone coming to my Untangle from the outside will be port forwarded to port 80, which is on an internal machine, which is my web services. Really simple to do. But let's say I'm having problems. People say they can't connect. What I'm going to do is go ahead and use my troubleshooting tool here. Just click on that. And I'm going to be able to ping the destination behind there, because maybe I have the wrong IP address, or maybe my box is down. I can just go ahead and ping that box and say, oh, my box is up, it's registering back, so that's good. Next thing I can do, I can verify that I have a connection to that over that port 80. So here's my problem. So I don't have port 80 open on that particular box, so that's why people can't get to it. I highly recommend, if you're having problems with those port forward rules, is to use the troubleshooting. And the troubleshooting really just uses the troubleshooting tools that are built into Untangle, but we specify all the parameters that you need based on your port forward rules. So it's kind of handy. You don't really have to learn how to use these tools very rigorously, because we provide a lot of the infrastructure for that rule just by using your port forward setup. So let's say my web services, I want to limit it to only like maybe a certain office or particular IP addresses. So for those cases, I'm going to want to go to advanced networking. So we've taken our simple thing and we created the rules behind the scenes. So now those rules are visible. So I can make modifications to that. So I'm going to say, for example, I only want people coming in from a particular address. Let's say only people are coming in to see these it's going to be from this particular IP address that I have. So now what's going to happen is anybody in the public tries to go to my web services. If they don't have this particular IP address, they just won't get any kind of web page or anything like that. There will be no connection. It's kind of like the IP, it doesn't exist. So it's something that kind of, if you want to start limiting, you can go to advanced rules and create a far more complicated rules in those cases. And it works very well. You can do other things. You can, if you are pointed to multiple ports, for example, maybe you can limit certain web addresses just to connect to that particular port number. So really a lot of things you can do with that particular advanced port forwarding. So let's go ahead and just save that port forward. So that's kind of the advanced port forwarding and different ways you can do it and how to troubleshoot it. Let's go to our next one. So again, I can actually use the same public IP address and have multiple servers being used by that if they're on different ports. So the key thing is the machine behind it has to have a unique port that's being port forwarded. You can't have two port forwards for example, web services, because they're on port 80, going to two different servers. It has to go to the same one. So again, some of the rules on that, you know, the simple rules will usually cover 90% of the cases you're going to have out there. Also, the less conditions that you have in there, the better. Some people try to get really complicated, and remember, all those conditions have to be all applied before the port forward is successful. Definitely use the troubleshooting link that we have on there for your port forward. It will help you get through the different issues you have, whether you got the right services, if your box is responding behind it. It will definitely help you minimize any problems that you have with port forwarding. Some of the things that I do in particular to avoid people, for example, let's say you have a site, www.widget.com, and that's pointed towards your Untangle, which is forwarded to your web server. People on the inside of your network, if they go, for example, to www.widget.com, they're going to go out to the internet and then back through the port forward. While that does work, it's called a hairpin port forward. I do recommend putting a local DNS entry so people are not going out through your firewall and then back in. Instead, they'll go directly to the web server. And that's really easy to do. If Untangle is providing your DNS for your local network, it's super easy. All you do is go to networking. I'm going to go to my DNS server, and then I'm going to add an entry in here. And I'm going to add, for example, www.widget.com, and I want it to go to my local IP address that I have port forwarded. This avoids people in the internal network using the port forward and putting more of a load on your box. Nothing you really have to do, just makes things a little bit easier on that. Again, this will make everyone going to that particular address, instead of going out through the firewall, go directly to your box. So only your LAN network is impacted and not your Untangle. Session Viewer, a really helpful tool to see what's going on. Stuck on a little side, couldn't click on the X. So one of the more useful to find out what's going on in your network if you're having a particular problem is this session viewer. This shows you all the traffic that's going through your particular network, and you can see if there's any problems on there, like if your traffic's not coming in. I actually group it by the, grouped it by the wrong one. I group it by the client, and that way I kind of group together all the machines and what they're doing. So in this case, I only have minimal traffic going out. This is actually the internal of the Untangle I'm using, and so very little traffic, and this is the traffic of me coming into it. So I can really see what's going on and see any problems, and it's a really useful tool. Another useful part of it is you can see what rack that particular traffic is going through. So if you're having problems like I'm making the settings to this particular app, like Firewall, why isn't it taking effect? If you take a look at Session Viewer, you might not be going through the policy or rack that you think you are, and you're making changes to the wrong version of the firewall. You might be making firewall changes to the default rack, where you should be changing the firewall settings to the, for example, the secondary rack that you have. Really useful, a lot of information in here. So that is basically port forwarding. We could go on for quite a long time on port forwarding because there's so many things you can do with it. It's really useful, and again, I really emphasize using the simple rules. One-to-one NAT. One-to-one NAT really comes into the case where you have multiple IPs on your Untangle on the external, and you're looking to specify which IP traffic from an internal source is going to go in and out. So in this case, right now, I only have one IP. So what I'll do is go ahead, and I got a new IP from my provider. So I'll go ahead and put that in. And let's see here, and let's see, it's 16. So I'll go ahead and put that in. So this particular situation, I have, let's say, a web server behind there, and I don't want it on the same IP that I do to administrate my Untangle. And luckily I have more than one IP. So in this case, what I'm going to do is go ahead and make sure that machine only goes out a certain one. So there's two things I'm going to do. First, I'm going to change my one-to-one NAT, my port forward, and I'm going to take this destination local, which means take any traffic coming into any of my WAN ports, and I'll be able to do that. So I'll go ahead and delete that. And in this case, what I'm going to do is do a destination address. So people that are coming in and they're going into my new IP address are the only ones that are going to get port forwarded to my web traffic. And let me go ahead and delete that. So in this case, only web traffic that's going to this particular IP address, whether you have a domain name associated with that IP address, or they're going to that IP address directly, are going to get port forward to this 80. So all incoming traffic is going to come specifically through that IP address. So once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and go in my NAT rules, because I also want my web server to only go out through that. And this is where I create my outgoing rule. So what I want to do is we can just name that anything we like, and what we're going to do is set up when the source address, this is the box on the inside, so the source address is going to be my web server, and I want that to go out a custom IP address, which is the IP address I just added. So now all the incoming and outgoing IP traffic will come out through this specific IP address, and it will not go out through the other one. It's kind of a way to kind of separate your network and have specific services coming out different IP addresses. And again, this is if you have multiple IP addresses. So yeah, there's two parts to doing one-to-one NAT. Is you have to create your port forward rule that has your specific IP address or interface, and then you also have to create the NAT rule, which is going to show what internal address is going to go out which interface or which IP address. And I just wanted to show that one more time. So it's kind of different. You're going to put the source address and the IP address, and then your external actually goes into the source. So almost like the reverse of a port forward. So VoIP considerations. One thing VoIPs need is really a continuous UDP connection, and any kind of scanning of that traffic can cause small interruptions in the voice call. So what I recommend on that in particular is to create a bypass rule. And what I do is I just go into networking, and usually what I do is assign a particular range for my phones, so they'll go out so I can identify the phones. So I'll say, bypass phones. I'll go ahead and say, excuse me, source address, and I'll give it a range that I have all my phones on. So in this case, I'm going to say from 200 to 250, for example. So all those IPs are going to be my phones, and I want to bypass that. That'll prevent Untangle doing any kind of filtering, any kind of scanning of that traffic to give me a smooth connection out to the network. And it's pretty, it works pretty much flawless. The other thing you can do, if you don't have particular IP ranges, you can do something like the particular port that's going out. So if the destination port, for example, is 5060, which is a common one for VoIP points, it's another one that you can bypass. You can do both rules. Really, again, look at the session viewer, see what your phones are using, and develop a type of rule that you can do on that. One thing that you can do for your phones or any kind of services, if you don't want to assign an IP address, or it's very difficult to assign a static address to an IP address to that particular device, is using Dhcp static configuration. So you can go to your Untangle, and if you're providing Dhcp, for example, in this, I have this particular box, and it's set up with a, it looks like it's getting Dhcp. So what I can do is make that static by clicking the plus on it. And then now that box will always get the same IP address every time it logs in. There's some different, you can change the address in here as long as it's in your Dhcp range. And then you can add descriptions, to say, this has a SIP phone on it also. Whatever you need to do, it makes it really easy, and that way you're assured that that particular device is always going to have that IP address. It's useful if you're going to do a port forward to it, or if you have some DNS, internal DNS that you want to point to that particular area. Also for bypass, if you want to bypass the traffic from this particular box, now you can be assured that that box always gets the same IP address. So kind of lastly, and then we'll start covering some of the questions, VLANs. VLANs is really like making a ghost interface. So it's exactly the same as a NIC on the Untangle, except there's no physical cable going to it. So in this case, you can make a VLAN, and you can either direct the traffic to that particular segment of your network by using a VLAN capable switch, or having that particular device, if it has the ability to tag VLANs on there. Super simple. It's like creating just another network. So the first thing you want to do is just figure out which one that you're going to do. And let's see, we're going to add a VLAN. So we're going to say, call it internal 2. We're going to make the parent, and this is what it's going to be, which interface it's going to be connected to. In this case, it's going to be the internal. And really, I can give it any tag. I'm just going to call it tag 10. And configuration type. Do I want it addressed or bridged? Usually I do bridged because I just want it to be connected to the regular LAN. So actually, I'm going to make it addressed. It's a lot simpler. And so what I'll do is give it an address. And give it a mask. And I'm going to go ahead and set up DHCP for that area. Okay, so now I have another interface, and let's go ahead and apply that. Configuration error on that. Let's take a look. And then I save it, and then now I'm going to configure my switch for the particular NIC on my switch to have all traffic from this particular VLAN to go out through that particular switch. It's really simple, and the key is you have to remember it's just another NIC on the network. By default, all internal NICs can talk to each other on the network. So if you want to separate that network, that VLAN network, you have to create some input filter rules for that. So now I have a new interface. It's part of the internal network, and I have a separate VLAN. So all that traffic will be segregated away from my other one based on the tag that that traffic is producing. Again, the tagging must be from end to point. So you either have to have it on the switch that the rest of the traffic's going through, or the particular device that's on the other end. And the other part of that part is so that's the real basics of VLAN. It's really simple to do. It gets more complicated if you're getting trying to segment. Oh, the other thing I was going to show was for input filter rules. So by default, all the internal networks can talk to each other. If you want to block the traffic between the different networks, you have to go to Advanced and then Filter Rules. And then what you're going to do is create a forward filter rule and say, you know, I want to block between my internal and my VLAN. So what you do is you just say, I want the particular interface, the source interface, it's going to be my internal, and then my destination interface is going to be my internal 2, which is my new VLAN, and I want to block that traffic. So that will effectively block the traffic between my internal NIC and my new VLAN. But like I said, normally they're just open to each other and they can communicate. Like I said, there's probably a lot of questions on that. Definitely, it really depends on your specific network, and I recommend posting the forums if you have specific questions. VRRP. This comes to mind where you know, hardware always at some point fails. It's just kind of the nature of hardware. It doesn't last forever. So a lot of times what people do is they'll set up 2 untangles that will have connections out to the internet simultaneously and to the thing. The key about, for example, when you're setting up VRRP is you have to have, if you're doing it for the outside interface and the inside, the outside interface you need at least 3 IPs. So you need as many untangles as you have plus 1, because the virtual interface will have to have its own IP address. We have some really good setup guide on the wiki, really describes it clearly. This ghost IP is where your traffic is going to be coming in, and that will just seamlessly switch between the 2 boxes based on which one is the master and which one's the slave. And that determination is just based on the VRRP protocol that's communicated between the 2. Super simple setup. Let me get this particular box here. So we just go to networking. We're going to go to our external. We're going to set that as VRRP. And I'm just going to open it up down here. We're going to enable VRRP. The ID has to be the same among the same interface. So all the externals for your various boxes will have the same ID. And then you can set the priority for that particular one. So let's say we're going to call this ID 10. This is going to be our master, so we want to give it a pretty high priority. And we want to put our VRRP interface. This is the ghost interface that everything's going to connect to. So we'll go ahead and put that in. And we're going to say it's 16. So now we have that one set up. We're going to go ahead and set up the internal also with VRRP. So the key thing on this is that the the internal and the external must be the same master. So you can't have different internal interfaces having different priorities than the external, for example. So in this case, what we want to do is kind of go down the same road. So we're going to give it a different ID. In this case, we're going to call it 30. And then we're going to give it a similar priority. And of course, we have to give it a special IP address for the internal. So we're just going to give it to 60. So we're going to go ahead and save that. Now, what we're going to do is get a separate box that we have that's going to be basically in parallel with the other one. As you can see, you can mix versions also. Usually doesn't really matter on that. So we'll go ahead and set up our VRRP over here. Again, we're going to enable that. We're going to give it an ID, same as our previous box, and we're going to give it a lower priority. We're going to give this a priority of 40. So we'll go ahead and apply that. If we look back at our original one, we'll notice that the master light is lit on it. So we know this one's the master of all the IPs that are coming in. And this one, I forgot one thing, got to add the same IP address. So this IP address needs to be copied over here. So we're all set on that one. So again, it's a really easy way to set up multiple duplication. All your traffic will only go through one untangle. You need to. What I use is the backup and restore to sync the two boxes so they have the same settings. And you don't want to sync the network settings, so they have kind of a nice feature on this. So if we go to, so we'll go ahead and do a backup of the master. And then on the slave untangle, what we'll do is restore settings, but we're going to accept current network settings. So we don't want to change our network settings. Of course, that has to be different, but it's going to input the same applications, the same special rules. It's a way of synchronizing the two with all your settings changes. And it's kind of an easy thing to do. I just kind of naturally do it each time I make setting changes to the first one, especially if I add any web filter bypasses, if I have any IP bypasses, so forth. I can just add those as I go along on both boxes. That's really the essentials of VRRP, really simple to use. Again, if you're going to do both VRRP on both external and internal, you have to make them the same priority on the same box. One of the issues on that. Again, troubleshooting, session viewer, trouble rules. One thing I wanted to go over was some people have asked about the troubleshooting rules. One of the most useful ones is the packet test, and this enables you to see what's going on in your network in live time. So what I'll do is go ahead and start some traffic here. And if I go to here and say, I want to look at port 80 traffic, and I want to look on the internal network. And so I'll run the test. So here I can see the kind of traffic that's going through my box. This in case the box behind it is going out to this web server that I have out on the network. So I can see exactly what's going on that and troubleshoot if there's any problems. I can also see if it's coming back in. I can look at the external, do a run test on that, and now I can see the traffic if it's being replied back. You can see the reply coming back from that particular box. Again, really useful, really simple to use. You can just you can also limit this by IP address because sometimes the traffic gets, if you have a normal, there's going to be a lot of web traffic. So if I want to limit it just to my particular box, I can go ahead and limit there. So you can limit by interface, you can limit by IP, by port, and really figure out what's going on if there's any problems on that. Let's see. Definitely ask questions on the forums. We're active on there. I'm on there pretty consistently. Usually if you're in our office hours time, you usually get answers within a few minutes. And that's about all. Do we have any questions, Shannon?
Yeah, we have a lot of questions coming in, and our team members are helping answer those. Let's see if we have any. If you have any specific use cases or specific questions on how certain things should be set up, please contact us at support. A lot of the answers depend on your use cases and goals and what you're trying to do, which we can't really answer on these webinars. So if we want to continue, just we can wrap up. Please keep sending in your questions. So we go to the next slide, John.
Oh, one thing I was going to mention is some of these things have gone kind of quickly. We do have this webinar on YouTube afterwards, so if you want to kind of step backwards and maybe pause at different points at this, it's kind of a good way to kind of cover over the subjects a little slower.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yes, the webinar is being recorded, and it will be on our YouTube channel, and a link to the recording will be sent out tomorrow. So you can look for that, and we also post it on our website. So don't worry, you can go back and revisit areas and listen to this as many times as you want. But if you are confused or still need help with any configuration or installation or anything, we do offer professional services. So please keep that in mind. Just for any issues you may have, that goes beyond the realm of support. We do have help for you with our great technical team. So keep that in mind. Next slide, John. So we are very, very pleased that Untangle was mentioned and named in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Unified Threat Management for the first time this year. For those of you who are not familiar, Gartner is one of the world's leading information technology research and advisory companies, and we do have the report on our website that you can download for free. See why Untangle NG Firewall was recognized in this report and see where the industry is going. So don't worry, a follow-up link will be in that email that we're sending out tomorrow as well. And to just reiterate, all of our resources we have available. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks to the team for answering all the questions that we had come in. We have support, we have sales. As John mentioned, we have the wiki and the forums. The wiki is all of our technical documentation. The forums is a community where you can post your question or look through other people's posts and see if they've had similar issues or configuration requests that they want, so you can post it on there or look through there. All of our, most of our technical team is on there every day looking at your posts and helping you answer questions. Our next webinars coming up for the rest of the year, we have an Intro to NG Firewall, so if you're not familiar with Untangle and this webinar was completely out of range for you, please visit that, or if you know anyone that is looking for a solution that isn't familiar with Untangle, this is the webinar for you. And we also have another Tech Talks around Policy Manager later in December. So please register for those if those are interesting to you, and we will definitely continue these webinars into 2017, so keep a lookout for our next schedule. Thanks, John, for the great demonstration and answering all the questions, everyone. We hope to see you next time.